on LinkedIn. So let's just focus on StreamYard. Jay, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 7 of Founder Design Thinking. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jay-Z. Thanks for having me. I love saying that I'm talking to Jay-Z.
The one and only, or one of many. Well, Founder Design Thinking's goal is to find more than 10 unicorn founders like us who believe that user pain points and customer research is at the core of founding new startups and companies. I'm Jay-Z. I love taking companies from 0 to 1, helping them gain that initial traction. So Jay, take it away. Give us a short intro about yourself.
Okay. I am the founder and one of the product strategists at New Haircut. We work with product leaders, so we help them prove some interesting and customer-centered bets to put on their product roadmaps.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. We have 6 questions today, and I think you have such an interesting story because you started as a product development studio. So the first question is, New Haircut started as a product development studio. What drew you and the company to adopt design thinking?
Well, yeah, so my background's in software engineering, then product management, and I sort of like used that as the launching pad to start New Haircut. Our hypothesis was that we could get to market faster with the technology products that we were building for our client companies and even some of our own internal products. I had a history of like taking like large, slow, cumbersome processes and teams from corporate and making them move faster. I used to like lead and train teams on Agile. And so that became sort of like the starting place for New Haircut. And so like we got really good at designing and building lists of features and getting them out to market quickly. So like what I used to do at Accenture when I started in software development, things that would take me a year or 2 years, we were able to do in 2 or 3 months. So like just like raw speed was really interesting to us. The problem that we faced where design thinking became attractive was that those lists of features were basically like cobbling together products that solved unimportant problems or solve problems in ways that like there was no real unmet need there. Or if we did, we had like grossly misunderstood what the problem was, mostly because we didn't know what problem we were solving or who it was for or what they did today to solve that and what those solutions look like. We just had really like, as a software engineer, I had no tools to help me ask those right questions about what the problem is, what it was like, who is it impacting, like what would success look like for the customer, for the company. And design thinking as like a framework allowed us to, this is like a long evolution, but it allowed us a framework to better answer those important questions before you jump into building solutions.
All right, so I have a follow-up question on that. And Shal, thanks for commenting in the comment feed. And anyone else, if you have a question, please comment it there. And Jay will decide if he wants to answer it all at the end or immediately. But I'm going to start with my question, which is, how do founders react? I imagine there are a lot of technical founders who are like, I just need to build it and then, test it in market, or other founders who are like, I've had 20 years of experience in this field and I know this is what we need to build. So you might have encountered founders at Accenture or New Haircut who are like, oh yeah, I don't know what the KPI is. So kind of give us a breakdown of the top reaction.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think especially founders like well entrenched in the market have the curse of knowledge, right? So they've kind of like been in the industry, been working with their customer for a long time, and so I know what the problem is and I know how to solve it. I just need help getting stuff done faster. So most are interested in speed. But it's what really is the result is, I think what they really want is velocity. They want to be like moving quickly in like a well plotted direction. but they never slowed down long enough at the start to ask the right questions. And so like, it looks very frenetic for them. They're just kind of like shiny ball syndrome. And like, I always, I'm the first one to fall on the sword. Everything that all of my content and the premise of which my company is built upon, I break those rules every day, every week. I'm constantly like building stuff that I haven't researched and tested because I'm impatient. So like, I'm always dogfooding my process. And I think that's one of the challenges of design thinking, and why people like also recoil from it, is because it takes patience and rigor and structure and sort of commitment. And especially in this economy, I think those are in short supply. So it's hard to do design thinking well.
Thanks. I really appreciate that empathy, because like you and everyone, like, oh, I just need to get it in front of users, in code. And then if you have great success, but then you'll also have great failure with that, then you come back to the rigor and taking a little bit of a pause and slowing down to speed up. So I think I saw in your feed yesterday about, you're not asking the right question. The question is impact. And then perhaps the second question is like true speed to traction, not true speed to market. So I'll move on to the second question, which is, what's the most positive impact design thinking has had on your clients or your company? Maybe that's speed or impact. So take it away.
Yeah. I mean, to clients, if because we're a group that gets asked to come in and help them maybe like rethink an idea. Maybe they've been going after it for a while, so they've got like stale ideas. Maybe there's just too many balls in the air for them to like put concerted effort into like a kind of complex problem. So a lot of the time it's bringing in like fresh perspective. I think to be able to focus on the right priority feels really, there's a real draw to that, because most product teams that we work with, their number one complaint is that it's always like changing like priority of the week. Again, as the founder of New Haircut, I'm constantly changing our priorities, so guilty. But I think like having evidence and having a system that brings structure and sort of like a sense of calm to making progress toward the right goal instead of just any old goal that we can get to quickly feels, like you start to have a sense of purpose in your work. So for like the product team, like the direct product core team that we're working with, I think that sense of like pride in like the phrase that we use is like building a product that deserves to exist. I think that feels really good. For their executive leaders, like, and this is a sweet spot between like customer centricity, team organization, and what's important to the business, is like picking off the bets that are going to move the needle for the company. So like finding the important problems that the team is excited to solve and happen to align with company strategy. That feels like a real sort of like zoned in place to begin. The problem is like finding that in the murkiness of all the other priorities for the year.
Got it. And so it sounds like you come in to a existing company, a company that already has a direction and an initial product in the market. And so maybe it's a seed stage, or it could even be like a medium-sized company that's lost some inspiration or needs, some fresh thinking.
They, we've been working with large companies for a while. I actually have, I have like a pull back to work with earlier stage companies. But I think the right place to begin thinking about these things, it's always like the sooner you can begin thinking about like the core problem that you're solving, the less debt you're going into the conversation with. But it doesn't mean that you can't use like frameworks and approaches like design thinking to pull yourself back and find that root cause problem and then kind of like go forward again. So we work with companies at all stages, all sizes, for product, for service, for physical goods, for like business process overhaul, for marketing strategy, like, because it's really a business tool that helps you focus. It's really about like focus, building evidence quickly, and then like really kind of like moving from problem to solution to validated bet and putting it in the roadmap so that you can implement and build. So it's really applicable to lots of different size companies.
Got it. So sounds like you mostly work with medium to enterprise scale, but your, principles probably would be even better founded in an early stage company before they get there, going in the right direction. And so I'd love to hear an example of a situation action result of a company that you've worked with recently. So for example, I was talking to a social media company that had tried a second product and it failed. And everyone that they hired still had this idea as if it was their own, because there's a lot of user feedback and research that said users wanted this. But then after deployment, users never used the second product, even though they talked about it so much. So you talked about like filtering through the clutter of all the noise of, every day, not even every week, the priority is shifting, and aligning the user goal with the product team's goal with the leadership's desire for traction. So if you could just give us an example, that we won't have to kill, you don't have to kill us if we, know about it, some public example, I think that'd be really helpful to our audience.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, still one of our most successful collaborations was with Rosetta Stone a few years ago. And it's public domain, so I can talk about it pretty freely. They had, so at the time, like a 40-year-old company. If you don't know Rosetta Stone, they make language learning products. And so they had acquired these two co-founders of a smaller startup. And they did so because like they had domain expertise, and they also looked at them as leaders that could kind of like short circuit their way of going to market with new ideas, new product ideas. And so Christy and Maya hired us because they had an idea to like diversify revenue inside of a new market for the company. Like Rosetta Stone had traditionally sold direct to consumer, and they were thinking about selling to schools, in this case, a language learning product. So it was like a new customer segment, a new way of working, new team members kind of coming together, all while like upholding their existing sort of like core products that were bringing money into the company. So like maybe an air of like innovate but don't change kind of thing happening. So I very much liked working with Christy and Maya because they took the approach of like asking for forgiveness, not like, acceptance up front. And we used our sort of like way of working, like rooted in design thinking. We used our frameworks and our methods to help the team like really come together, agree upon the problem that they were going to solve, which was important for, like as a leader that's looking at using design thinking, to be able to like invite your team into that discussion so that they have a hand in it. Both Christy and Maya knew the importance of that, because it can't always just be like build my idea, because that's not gonna have legs. So, like I think as much as teams appreciate the collaborative nature of design thinking, I think leaders, once they get a handle on it, they understand that it's a way to empower their teams and to like bring them into their priorities without micromanaging, without like sort of like just build what I tell you to build kind of thing, because that just feels crappy for most people, I think. And so like with them, we were able to like center in on a really big opportunity for the company, kind of like churn out a couple different prototype ideas, go into schools, test it with kids. And that, I think 2 years later, they launched that thing to market. And it wound up becoming like one of their most successful products. And it also like entered them into a new market. And like there's a testimonial of this on our website where Christy says like it basically changed the way that they look at product development. So it like checked every box for me in terms of like what's the win for the company, like good product, profitable, new market, diversified revenue, and like the team well bought into it, so much so that like leadership gives it the thumbs up of this is how we want to go to market with new ideas. So it was like a really fun, rewarding project.
Oh, that sounds exciting. What was it called?
It's called English. It's, well, in the process, Lexia Learning, something happened with Rosetta Stone and Lexia Learning. There was like a merger and acquisition there. So Lexia Learning has it on their site. If you go to Lexia Learning something, you'll find it as English. I think it's just called English. And it teaches non-native English speakers how to speak English.
Okay. Can you give us any more detail about?
Yeah, well, like the cool thing, because the process allowed the team to pick up in terms of like problem understanding and problem solving, what happened was like Christy and Maya got to do what can we call it? They provided like that air cover. So like what they would do is they used the process, and like we were out in Cambridge doing this stuff in person. But they would invite their senior leadership team in to see what we were doing. So it was like very much like evangelize and advocate while doing the process and showing the wins for the business. So I think like what they were able to do is to play like that. It was as very much like an educational process for the company to like transform while building and while winning. And so sometimes that's like a tricky spot to be in. Sometimes we get asked to train and like evangelize so that the business will invest in that. But that's hard because if they don't see like the immediate return on investment, it's hard to like kind of like bring the team up with new process. And then just the same, it's hard to start with like a business opportunity because that's always going to be like a gnarly kind of like difficult problem to solve. So like starting there seems like maybe we should just start on the small project, but then it doesn't produce the wins. So it was like really just the perfect opportunity to find like a big enough problem to solve that would move the needle for the company, that the team could like kind of come into the process and learn. So it was fun.
Awesome. Well, that's a great transition to our third question. How has your company and how has your clients changed since adopting design thinking? And any stories or examples are always helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we completely changed as a company. So we went from development studio at a time. I used to have a business partner. We had 35 employees about that. So we were like stocked with designers and engineers and project managers. We were spread across 3 offices. It's a lot to like, I guess we were more of an agency back then, right? Like more like a digital agency. And it's a lot. It takes a lot of people to go sort of like start to finish of shipping a new idea. And so for us, like the biggest change was over the course of a few years, what wound up happening is we were able to attract a different sort of caliber of person because now we all had a hand of deciding what we would build for our clients, which is different than like an executive like product strategist, like working with a client team and then just kind of like farming the work out to like the more junior design and engineer to build out. So we all could like have that collaborative discussion with the team. So that I think that attracted more senior level people because they got to be part of that sort of like more of a strategic conversation. And so like over time, when we did that enough, like our initial interest in design thinking was to fix our development process. And we did, we fixed it. But then it's almost like once we fixed it, in the process, we fell in love with like understanding the real problem. So more things that are about like strategic vision and prioritization and upfront discovery so that you could put the right bets on the roadmap. So like that's over the course of 4 years, we've kind of like unwound our development capabilities and now we're just in strategy and discovery. So that was a big shift for us. So basically like a new business a new business model for us. So that was a big change. Our customer changed because we used to interface more with like a technology leader, because it was about like, build
Mm.
this thing that we've been talking about for a year, but just haven't gotten to, which is a really kind of like low, it's a very commoditized market to get into. So like we have a lot of development companies that reach out to us because they like the fact that we can open the door for them to like bring them technology projects that are already kind of like vetted and there's a problem to be solved. So our customer changed more from like a technology leader to a product leader. Like we work with a lot of like a VP of product or a director of product that has like a direct access to like a business stakeholder and maybe like a product line, and they're trying to either like reinvent it or get it off the ground.
Yeah, so the personnel changes and the headcount cuts, I can definitely relate to that. So when I worked in machine learning, there's a lot of personnel changes away from manual work to more strategic work with the AI models, and then headcount reduction, so that the people you did have were much more senior, be able to assess, like tell the model you did it wrong, instead of telling 200 workers you did it wrong. So there's definitely this kind of upscaling of the talent level, and then kind of narrowing of how many people you need.
Yeah. We used to not get hired because we were too small. And now I think like when you hire strategists, it doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. I think we do get compared to like a McKinsey or a BCG or something like that, and they have like thousands of people. But what I appreciate is that this work is actually intentionally small and like very fast and iterative. So you don't need an army of people. Sometimes you need like a handful of researchers, especially if you're trying to do like quant analysis of like market trends. But in general, it can be like small squads of people, as opposed to like, I used to need 20 people to build start to finish. So in that sense, as a business owner, it's easier. I don't have to like feed 30 people. I can just focus on like keeping a small and mighty team.
Awesome. All right. Well, moving on to question 4. Why should other founders or product leaders or business leaders invest in design thinking, being that we're in a recession, there are already headcount cuts? What's that value prop? Is it speed? Is it impact?
Yeah, well, you used the key phrase that you used before is slow down to speed up. So I've always kind of thought about it as like the difference between investing in ads versus investing in like organic search. So investing
I love that. That's awesome. Keep going.
Investing in design thinking is like investing in organic search. Like you're going to have to break a bunch of stuff that you have, which probably, I was going to say shitty. I don't know if that is against the LinkedIn gods to curse. You're going to have to like break existing process. People are going to have to like kind of let go of some tendencies and habits that they have. You're going to have to probably go back to go forward. So you're going to have to like rethink some of the research that you've done, or do the research that you maybe claim to have done, but it was just a survey instead of like actually going and talking with your market. But then what that does is it creates like quadratic the ROI on the investment up front is sort of like a quadratic payoff. Like if you spend, say, like a month kind of like going back, fixing some of the process, doing some of the research, the amount of like alignment and buy-in you have on the right problem to solve, like how do you put a price tag on that versus like just like rapidly building, like scaling your agile fleet to rapidly build products that nobody uses. So it's like you have to be willing to like get past that dip as an executive leader, and have like be able to like think forward in terms of the payoff that you're going to get in 6 months to a year. And that's hard. It's hard for me to do consistently. I've already said that. And right now, where it's like do more with less is just like the theme of the year. That's hard. That's hard to make that investment. So it has to be worth it. So that means that you really have to pick the right bet. You have to pick the thing. Like, don't use design thinking to add the button to the page, right? Like pick the big hairy problem that I think this might be your next problem, like how to get started. It's like pick the problem that you've been using the same kind of like tried and true process and have gone nowhere with over the last 1, 2, 3 years. That if solved will create like some good ROI for the company, some real like impact back to your market, and experiment with like small bursts of like research and prototyping and like rapid iteration. Like even if you're doing like paper prototyping and like getting feedback from customers and inviting like 1 or 2 kind of like stakeholders and sort of like your detractors from change, just invite them into those like small bursts of experimentation. It's a great place to start. I was also, I'm happy to admit that I was like one of the biggest detractors in the company when we were going downhill. We were like, as a development studio, we were burning out. Like we were just like hiring people, building these products, losing contracts, not solving important problems. And there was a moment where we could like adopt design thinking. And I was just like, it's nonsense, it's garbage, it's bullshit. It's not going to do anything. Snake oil. So all these articles about like design thinking is supposed to fix the world. I understand why those ideas exist. So until you do the work and really commit to the work and like do all the magic of the prep and the in-between and the hustle and the research and the synthesis and all those things that it takes to like get the value from design thinking, then it becomes a real big kind of shot in the arm.
Okay. So you mentioned marketing and organic versus paid search, and this audience is, founders and product managers. So I'm just trying to think of an example. So is organic like saying, I'm going to make a new allergy app and then people coming to test the wireframes and talk to me about it, versus paid being like best allergy app out there and buying like lots of Google keywords to serve the link under? What's a good example of, marketing terminology?
It's a good question. I think AdWords or like direct ad is, you want to launch a new allergy medication. Okay, here's like 5 concepts. Pick the best one. Like you as Jay-Z, you know your market. Pick the best one based on what we went off and did over the weekend, and we'll ship that to market. Then when we have that thing in the market, we'll use data and insights, and we'll iterate and pivot. I think that's nonsense. I think there's a time and a place to do like A/B testing and experimentation, mostly when you're like post product market fit and you can do some like rapid usability tests. But using that to prove that there's a problem to be solved and that your solution solves it the right way, I think that requires you to use more of an organic approach, which is more like, let's start by understanding the problem to be solved. Let's make sure that, so we want to, as a business, we want to get into the allergy medication space. If we're able to do that, we think we can grow revenue by X%. So like strategically as a business, this is a good investment and a good space for us to play in. Now you product team, you go and like do the discovery to find the problems to be solved. And maybe it's not, maybe it's a telemed service where people recommend like better foods to eat so that you can like avoid typical allergy symptoms. And it's not like becoming like doing like R&D on a new pharma drug, which seems like a really expensive bet to be in. So it's like, that's the kind of thinking where it's like, let's spend a month, let's find the right problem. Then we can think about like potential solutions to solve that problem.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot, but that was a great example. Thank you so much.
I'm happy you asked me. I've never had to think through that. So now I have something to share.
So I'm sitting in front of these cherry blossoms. On the one side, they're real from my backyard, and on the other side, they're fake. And so it is allergy season, and definitely thinking about that. And just recently talked to some users about, they want like GMO peaches that they can not be allergic to. And they're like, I don't need another allergy medication. So that's the kind of like pain point discovery. I'm like, How do I genetically modify a peach versus like the 1,000th allergy medication out there that could not compete with like the Claritin?
Yeah, right, right. And that's the thing, right? There's always like I have this problem, I want to solve it. So like we jump A to B as quickly as possible. But like often solving like the most complex problem is rarely a direct line from what exists to what might exist. So that requires like abstraction, slowing down, research, kind of like getting out of the building, like all these, whether it's design thinking or just like talking to humans that are not your own team. I think that's honestly what design thinking is. It's just structured really well. That's the play. That's the value that design thinking brings.
Awesome. All right, so great transition to number 5. You talked about, well, I'd started the conversation with, all these founders be like, no, I don't want to do that, hooey. And then you actually revealed that you used to be one of these people that, used to be really mistrusting of the value of design thinking, and you got turned around. So I really appreciate that in leaders, like your authenticity and being open to an idea that kind of was revolting to you and being able to just consider it. So question 5 is, what's your advice on getting started for the people who are like, no, don't make me, or just people who are like, I don't know what that is and I don't know how to pitch that to my manager. How did you open up to it? Like, what did it take?
I waited too long, so I got lucky in the fact that it worked for us to like really kind of like save our company and transform our company. So we waited until sort of our back was up against the wall. We could have continued to build products the way we had always built them. We probably would have gone out of business. Especially like the options to hire a team outside of the US that could build these things for cheaper with more people. So that was a tough business to be in. I think to get started, I think, like there are all these frameworks that have sprung up, like design sprints. Design sprints became kind of like the Trojan horse that allowed us to understand design thinking and use it. And then from there, we kind of like went in a whole bunch of directions using the principles of design thinking to get started. For us, it was a design sprint because it was like, there's such a formula to it and it's packaged so neatly. Our first sprint, my former business partner at the time, we like rented a room in New York, brought a couple of founders in that I had been like arguing with. That's what I was doing. We could say I was negotiating, but I was basically arguing with them for like 16 months on their feature set. And they had all the evidence in the world to suggest that they were right. And we had all the expertise in the world to say that we were right. Nobody was talking to the customer. And so we're like, you know what? Forget it. We're going to pay. We're going to fly our team. We're going to meet in New York. We're going to do this thing. It's very design thinky. And like my co-founder at the time was like thumbing through the sprint book and just like following it like he was baking a pie. And it was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was like 10x better than anything we had ever done. Like team felt great. There was energy. There was like, yes, this is the thing. We went out, we built the thing. The engineering team like understood it at a different level. So sometimes the best place to start is just to pick a project that you've just been stuck on for a long time. And you could just be like, we've got nothing to lose. Or on another place to start is like, just running like a small experiment with some of the like activities and mindsets of design thinking, like just do some customer interviews and like invite the team in there to take notes, like ask them what they think, like what do they want to build to begin with, right? And then like run some interviews and see the transition of like, we thought this was the problem and this is what we learned was the problem. So ways to just kind of like gamify design thinking to get people to understand the value of talking to customers. Training sometimes is helpful because it sort of like puts this sort of like protective barrier around learning and experimenting with a new process without like bringing a business project into it. There's lots of different ways.
I see. So thanks again for sharing your personal experience. The lived pain is, you know, so valuable. I think you're saying that for you, it was a deadlock. You didn't want to give up on this project, but the client wanted a different feature set than what your expertise would point to. So because there was almost nothing to lose, uh, this was a way towards progress. Design thinking was a way towards progress, and perhaps a facilitation technique as well to bring the combatants to kind of a different focus. You know, instead of focusing on each other, focusing out towards the customer. Is that right, or would you say it in a different way?
Yeah, no, I like that. Yes, I think like you can wait like us. This project has just been otherwise stuck, but we still think that there's some merit in investing in it, but like we can't get the team. I mean, that was kind of like how a lot of these frameworks spin up, is like we think there's opportunity here. Like our existing process is totally blocking us from some progress. So a couple of people go and just like do some like quick paper prototyping and some testing with customers, bring it back to the larger team, and they're like, wow, we were totally off. I talked with a woman that works at Lululemon a few weeks ago, and like she keeps having repeated success where her VPs look at what they're doing and they're like delighted to see that their sort of like directives that they said like go and build this thing, what they wind up bringing to market are often like really different. So that for her is just like there's direct value. Like if we had built what you told us to build, we'd be here. Instead, we built this thing based on research and evidence. And it's generating X for the company. Like, and we were able to like kind of shrink our timelines. So having like pick your battle, like pick the right project that has been stuck, or like it's easy to show the before and after, because that will create easier momentum. There's a video on my website somewhere where I had a conversation with Doug Powell when he was at IBM about how he scaled design thinking. And there's like 5 or 6 additional points that he raised in there, like pick a champion that can get behind you, especially if you're working in a big company, pick the right project, pick the right magic people, which are like engineers that become like peripheral supporters of the work, because product and design and research tend to be like the core, and then you get like your engineers. So find those people that will support, sort of rally your mission with the groups that they work within. So there's a step-by-step approach that you can take.
Awesome. Well, we're moving on to our last question. And so anyone who's in the audience, please comment any questions that you have so Jay can get to them. And our last question is, where can others learn more about your ideas and the work you do? So you mentioned your website, you mentioned Google Design Sprint book. Is that the main place to start?
Newhaircut.com, definitely a good place. There's a lot of articles, there's content that we've built, there are toolkits that we've built. There's like free courses and toolkits that we've built out. So we try to democratize the process, especially like the things that we've built and adapted for us. And then otherwise, I share a decent amount on LinkedIn when I have the power to work through the algorithm in all of its glory. But I do put a lot of content and thoughts and stories and sort of like frameworks that we use out on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, so your LinkedIn is scrolling on the ticker on the bottom of this video, so everyone,
see it. That's
please follow Jay. And Jay, any last tagline or any last thought you want to leave the audience with?
No, I mean, like, I think like if the product managers here, I think those folks know that this stuff is hard work and it requires like a little bit of grit and commitment. Founders sometimes are a little bit more knee-jerk because they have pressure to deliver, to like get product market value, to get like to get fit, especially if they have like pressure from investors. I'll promise you, like slowing down to understand some of the raw principles of design thinking will pay off. You just have to be like willing to roll up your sleeves and be a little uncomfortable in the process.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll just close with, thank you for being one of those 10 unicorns who use design thinking in this 7th edition of Founder Design Thinking. The next episode will be with Jen Vandermeer. She does business thinking. So that's creating business models in this economy that will have immediate traction, immediate revenue, and a potential annual recurring revenue. So I think I'll just say I also myself offer classes in design thinking, market research, competitive analysis, and branding and podcasting. So let me know if any of you are interested in that. And let's give a big hand of thanks to Jay.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jay-Z.
Jay. Thank you
Thanks
for
for having me.
honestly telling your story, the trials and tribulations and all.
That's all it is, right? Thanks, Jay-Z. Good to be here.
Bye, Jay. Bye,
See ya.
everyone.